Predator's Errand, Part 4, Blood and Stardust. Isaiah and Smedley are in a cage in the back of the wagon. Smedley says, "Are you alright?" Isaiah says, "I got one hell of a headache, but nothing's broken." Smedley says, "They hit me with tranq darts before I could warn you. I couldn't smell the men over the rotting flesh until they were right on top of us." Isaiah says, "Yeah, I figured out the monster was a decoy about halfway to the ground after the fucking thing blew up and knocked me out of my tree." Smedley says, "I guess what we were hunting for found us. Take a look." Isaiah, "I look to the north and see a fucking tent that must cover at least 10 acres, about a quarter mile away from a burning town." Okay, back to Wilhelm and Miranda. On a rise about half a mile away from the tent, the crazed eyes of Wilhelm go wider and tears run down his cheeks as he points to the tent with a trembling hand, growling and laughing incoherently. Okay, inside the tent, Morgana is addressing the townsfolk that are strapped to the chairs. "When I was young, the church sent their thugs to enforce the will of Christ upon my family, to burn my parents alive and beat me with a burning torch. Dr. Cronthorne saved me. He taught me about my heritage and my birthright. The wildwood magic flows through my bloodline. No beast can deny my will. By the time I was 16, I had a degree in animal medicine, a pack of wolves and an unkindness of ravens and falcons at my command. I used my gift and my knowledge of animal physiology to assist the doctor with his experiments. You people are here because you are too weak to survive the laboratory, unfit to work, or insolent toward us. And now your purpose is to feed my pets." The wagon holding Isaiah and Smedley rolls into the tent as the beasts begin to devour the townsfolk. 4 guards with ape torsos, wolf heads, and 4 human arms each manhandle Isaiah and Smedley out of the cage. Smedley is put in the cage with Ghost Raven, and Isaiah is dragged across the tent and forced to his knees in front of Algernon. Cronthorne says, "So glad you made it to the show unbroken, Isaiah." Isaiah just glares. Smedley speaking to him in his head. "Jacob can't hear me, he's been drugged. I think the bitch with the pack of mutts has some kind of control over him." Isaiah says, "Looks like we've got our hands full. At least my head stopped pounding." Smedley says, "I think I have an idea. We need to end this quick. It's been a pleasure, Isaiah." Isaiah says, "Likewise." Miranda and Wilhelm are outside the tent. Miranda says, "Go retrieve my body, my love." Okay, Cronthorne's addressing Isaiah, who's on his knees in front of him. "Your friend and his misfit mongrel tore apart 5 very expensive mercenaries, and when the tranquilizer wore off, he eviscerated the other 2. The survivor is strapped to a table in my lab, participating in a very important experiment involving Ghost Raven's blood and an Uncle Hanway spell Miss Crosswood discovered when she took control of him and read his memories. What do you think you know about the Skinwalkers, Isaiah?" Isaiah says, "I know there's one in the cage right over there that's gonna fucking bite you in half." He looks over at Morgana. Morgana smiles and snaps her fingers. "There's another alpha come to challenge you. Kill him, sweetheart." Jacob starts to circle around Smedley. Smedley says, "Jake, wake up." Smedley sidesteps and dodges the first attack, and leaps up to land claws first on Ghost Raven's chest and tear a chunk out of his throat. As they fall under a torrent of blood, Smedley says, "Fang and Thorn, beast and tree, goddess of the greenwood, hearken to me." As they hit the ground, they're pulled up out of their bodies into the greenwood realm. Sheep Shadow in greenwood places stands next to a moonwell. Jacob stands in front of the goddess in his human form, with Smedley next to him. Smedley sits and lowers his head, and Jake takes a knee. The horned goddess steps forward and takes Jake's hand, saying, "Stand, child. A wolf witch kneels in service, never servitude. I need leaders, not minions. The time for hiding from the Sasquatch is over." She leads Jake to the moonwell, and they look into it and see the day the Uncle Hanway were supposed to go stay between the worlds with the Sasquatch and learn Veilwalker magic. The Sasquatch arrive in armor, with packs of war beasts and the power of the storm at their command. When the battle began, Ghost Raven took his 2 sons to the Hollis cabin. Upon returning to the clearing, he found it littered with the mangled bodies of his tribe. Raising his arms, he growls, "Fang and Thorn, beast and tree, spirits of the wild, hearken to me." The trees filled with ravens and eagles. Bears and wolves came by the dozens surrounding the Sasquatch. Ghost Raven shifts into his lupine form, and after a bloody battle, he and his allies pushed the Sasquatch back through the veil between the worlds, and with the last of his strength, sealed it behind them. Jacob, the oldest brother, who was 13, and Eli and Betty Hollis decided to hide the brothers from the Sasquatch by separating them, after a fashion. Jacob would remain close enough to look after Isaiah, who was only 3 years old. The younger Ghost Raven could not know he was a skinwalker because manifesting his shape-shifting powers would draw the attention of the Sasquatch. The goddess puts a hand on Jacob's shoulder and says, "You and your brother are among the last of my children. Go help him, then find the others." Miranda and Wilhelm are outside the tent. When Miranda sees her body, she screams. Wilhelm drops to his knees with blood running from his eyes and ears. At the same time this is happening, inside the tent, Morgana walks over and stands next to Algernon, and looks down at Isaiah and looks at Algernon. He says, "Are you ready?" She nods. Cranthorn holds out his right hand and says, "Show me your spirit, Isaiah, Ghost Raven." Isaiah transforms to his lupine form. As soon as Morgana starts to take control of him, she screams and drops to her knees with her head in her hands. Isaiah lunges forward and bites off Cranthorn's right hand. Algernon stumbles backward a few steps with blood spewing from the stump. He holds his left hand out with palm up, and it starts to glow like hot metal. He slaps it on the stump, cauterizes it. At this point, it starts raining inside the tent. Isaiah howls and leaps at Cranthorn, and right before he reaches him, a bolt of lightning comes down in between them, throwing them back in opposite directions. After the dust settles, standing in the craters, a Sasquatch with war beast on a chain. Isaiah is the first to recover. He jumps on the back of a war beast and breaks off a piece of his antler and buries it in the skull of the Sasquatch. And now the tent's catching on fire from all the lightning from all the Sasquatch arriving. And Jacob and Smedley are back in their bodies. They're getting out of the cage. Cranthorn is summoning all his freaks to the tent. Outside the tent, Wilhelm's rolling around on the ground. He's clawed his own eyes out. Morgana's starting to regain her composure because Miranda's attention is turned toward Wilhelm and away from her. Isaiah's gone feral. He's jumping from Sasquatch to Sasquatch, mangling them. Jacob and Smedley are outside the cage now. Smedley says, "Doesn't look like Isaiah needs any help." Jacob says, "Yes, he does. He's gone feral. The first transformation is the final test. To master the beast within, or remain a beast forever. Some of our ancestors failed the test, and ran off into the woods and had to be hunted down by the rest of the tribe. Morgana is now summoning all her beasts to the tent, and Cranthorn's freaks are flooding in. Morgana looks around, smiles, starts taking control of some of the war beasts. So now it's just a massive battle in the rain inside a burning tent. That's part 4, Blood and Stardust. Up next will be part 5, The Wild Hunt. So, Sweetwater and good hunting to you, and until our paths cross again.